All right, folks, welcome back. This is Yankees Unloaded. I'm Jake Ellenbogen, and he is Gary Sheffield Jr. And this is an episode after the trade deadline, our first trade deadline that we've covered as Yankees Unloaded. We actually probably covered it more last year. We did like a 3 or 4 hour hangout live stream, which I don't know if like even 5 people watched.
Well, we couldn't do 4 hours for this one. I mean, we didn't do
No.
4 hours worth of trades. We did
No.
like 1 or 2. And I don't think
the Yankees only got Keenan Middleton last year. So we did it for the whole league, essentially, because we were really fascinated by that.
And we were, but now we're more Yankee centric. And I don't think
good.
anyone was looking at Leiter. I think that's one. Yeah. And then 2, if you told us that Jazz Chisholm was going to be our one pickup, we even said on this show, Jazz Chisholm's good enough to make an impact for sure. 100%, especially fit wise. And then defensively, he's absolutely a fit because he can play third base, which we just learned. Okay. He's been excellent.
Just found
third base. He's been great. He's athletic. He's got a cannon. And frankly, he's got the mentality that I don't really care where I'm playing. I moved to in Miami. I went and played center field for this awful team. You think I won't go play third base for the Yankees? He's doing it and he's doing it well. So having said this, if you told us that that was our only move, I think most of us would have been pissed. And frankly, this morning I was livid. I just was because we didn't go get the arms that we said we were going to go get. I know that Jack Curry and Michael Kay had been talking about the fact that we were going to be going to get a righty and a lefty. And long and behold, we went and get Leiter, who has reverse splits. You can say that that was a makeshift move to get lefties out, sure, but a pretty disappointing deadline. But I will say this, Jake, and you mentioned this before we went live. That was such a big win. That win we had in Boston last week was the biggest win of the season. No, this was the biggest win so far. And we would have lost all momentum, okay? If we had lost this game, we're talking about we did really nothing at the deadline other than Chisholm. And then you go out there and you blow this game in extra innings, which the Yankees have done consistently throughout the year. We just are not winning games in the extra innings. So let's be clear here. My whole takeaway with this is that we won this game despite Aaron Boone, and that's obviously a good thing. But Jake, I actually wanted to bring this up to you because I thought this was like probably the most important thing that happened in the whole game. And it was the fact that DJ LeMahieu made his way back on the field for Ben Rice. This is something we've talked about a couple times because this is not a mistake that happened once and we're deciding to harp on it. This is something that's happened multiple times where Ben Rice comes up, there's a lefty on the mound, they go to DJ LeMahieu defensively and say, well, later on, DJ is going to take an at bat against a lefty. Then later on comes, and DJ LeMahieu is in a spot offensively, exactly where we don't want him, because offensively he's a nothing burger, with the game on the line, and he does absolutely nothing to our expectation. So Aaron Boone's really got to look himself in the mirror here, and you can make horrible decisions, but just like Dave Roberts for the Los Angeles Dodgers, it feels like certain managers make mistakes and then you'll turn on a game 6 days from now and it seems like you just watched the same baseball game play out. Thankfully, Jazz Chisholm was Barry Bonds today and kind of bailed us out of this performance. But I will say it was one of those times where one singular player really went out there and just wrote the whole game. Because remember texting me, Jake, you were like, oh, this game's probably over.
I thought the game was over.
Warren was getting hit around by the 3rd inning.
It looks like,
come on now,
that one game, that one style of game that the Yankees lose 99% of the time. Like,
yeah,
okay. Like, and the thing I want to actually, because we'll talk about the game for those of you who are wondering how this show is going to go down. Just to give you a brief overview, we're going to talk about the game first. Then we're going to get into our thought because we have a lot of thoughts about the trade deadline. And I've kind of gone back and forth because I'll save it, but I do feel like this market was bad. I'm just going to be honest with you.
Yeah. And we need to talk about Dominguez as well, because Dominguez is looming.
But yeah, definitely Brian Cashman, definitely Dominguez. Hold out for that. We're going to talk about the game though, because a lot of people are going to be excited. 7-6 win. Yankees get their 64th win of the year. They're 1 win away from tying the Phillies. Who would have thought after all that, after all, like basically they were decrepit from June 15th until like now. So
imagine if we had a closer.
I mean, for real though, he's now, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll get to that point, but I agree with you. So anyway, winning this game the way they did, I mean, the bats now coming alive. He had 11 hits. Aaron Nola was on the mound. Okay. Zach Wheeler was on the mound last night. This is what happens when you play great baseball teams. You go up against great pitching. And the Yankees, I mean, I'm not going to say that they absolutely trounced Nola. I mean, he only gave up 2 earned runs, but they got to him with the hits. They had 7 hits on him. Then they bled into the bullpen, and then they really took advantage of Strom. Strom, yeah, not great. Was missing his location. I know he had that strikeout. I think it was on Wells, which Wells definitely wants back.
Yeah, and we also took advantage of a Bryce Harper, who, by the way, Bryce Harper is hitting 069 his last 7 games. His last 15 games, he's hitting $172. Okay, so part of your job as a baseball team is to take advantage of the opponent. And some teams and I feel like there's been Yankees teams in the past where they just don't, like they'll just run into a team who's not playing good baseball at all, and you wouldn't be able to tell at all. They just show up and they don't bring it. The Yankees just kind of stoop to the level of competition, which, by the way, Philadelphia is a team that I mentioned, and so did you, that they're the best team in baseball, at least right now. They're not playing like the best team in baseball because they've been kind of awful. But overall, when we're talking about the entire season, I found them to be the best team. The Yankees showed up, and it didn't seem like they cared. They're like, oh, Harper's struggling. We're going to come in, and we're going to go right after him. And you saw that today.
Yeah.
The New York Yankees went out there, and they essentially attacked Bryce Harper, and it paid off. Thankfully, it didn't seem like it was going to. I was like telling my wife, oh, we're going to cook dinner, and this game's going to be over in 10 minutes. Don't worry. I'm the fool, okay? I'm the fool for thinking that Clay Holmes was going to be a 10-minute experience. I know.
You of all people. I'm surprised at you. Well,
I know.
Let's take a step back because we're going to get into Jazz and all that. We want to give them time. Let's talk about Will Warren's debut, because let's just try to, kind of bring people through this. Yes, he has a 6.75 ERA, okay, which is very similar to what he has in the minors. However, in July, he's been fantastic. Now, I want to say this about Warren. Put yourself in his shoes for a second. Thrown into the fire against the best team in the league, like we just established. And you come away with 5 1/3. So you gave the Yankees more than 5 innings, okay, in your first outing. You give up 4 earned runs, right? 3 of which came off the bat of Hayes. It was just like 1 mistake pitch, but he had 6 strikeouts. He only walked twice. This was somebody that I thought pounded the strike zone, was fearless, and Will Warren has never been a guy that I've been high on, as you know. So I'm giving credit where credit's due. I'm not a homer here. I dare I say was a little impressed with Will Warren because I thought it was his moxie. It was the fact he didn't look like he was overwhelmed in the moment, and he easily could have folded. And, the thing about Will Warren that impressed me the most is after you give up the home run, I talk about it all the time. I use the phrase all the time with Clay Holmes. Once Pandora's box is opened, it's just a whole thing, With Will Warren, he did the opposite of what Clay Holmes does. He gave up a 3-run shot to Austin Hayes, the 9th hitter, which, by the way, that's a pretty good 9th hitter, so I'm not knocking him. But he gave up the 3-run shot, right? Mistake pitch, he knew it. He could have folded. And instead, he retired 12 of the next 14 after the home run. And that is what put the Yankees in the driver's seat. Because I'll tell you right now, if Will Warren only goes 3 innings, the Yankees lose this game.
That honestly may be what Matt Blake told him when he went back to the dugout is you need to be realistic with this start. This is not about perfection. This is about length. This team is tired. Our bullpen, we didn't really get too many reinforcements.
Tim Hill left. So if he didn't go 5 innings, say he goes 4, they might not have had enough juice to get through this game.
Right. So that's something that a young player may want to hear. Yeah. Maybe a young player's like, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to be perfect. I need to squeeze through 4 innings or 4 or 5 innings. That's my job, and not to go out there and give you 2 earned runs. Like, that's 2 different ways to look at a start. Having to be perfect and having to give you length. The job today was that Garrett Cole was supposed to start, and he needed to go 6 or 7 innings. That's what we were expecting. That's what we were hoping for. But you can't look at a young player, regardless of how good they are, if a rookie, and he's going to come out here and make his debut, and you're just going to throw him out there. He wasn't expecting to start today's game. He just shows up, and you expected better than this. Well, I don't really know what to tell people. So, Jake, my whole takeaway with this start, I was really impressed after the second inning. I really was. But I wouldn't even say it means anything. I'm just happy it happened. Okay. Because I will say that about Yankees, like kind of Yankees social media in general, is that people feel like if someone does something well, it means something. Like I have to do something with it. Like Warren needs to now go out there and have another start. No, that's not at all what I think. I just think breaking down today's game, you have to be impressed that a young player got punched in the mouth essentially with a really good 9-hitter and then went out there and punched back. And him punching back gave us a fighter's chance. And frankly, we stole this game. I know we had 11 hits.
Yeah.
We stole this baseball game. I think anyone would have told you in their right mind as a Yankees fan, either the Yankees just weren't going to score enough runs today to win, or Clay Holmes was going to blow the game. Both of which essentially almost both happened. So and again, I put my hand up. I'm the fool for thinking Clay Holmes was going to save the game. But I will say, in general, you have to love what you're seeing from this lineup, which in theory should get 1,000 times better in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. And I know you're talking about Jason Dominguez there.
Oh yeah.
You know, I don't know if the plan is to play Stanton every other day. I don't love it because I was listening to the Michael K show today, and I love listening to Michael K. He's not afraid to say what he actually means. And there are times where I'm listening to him and I'm like, I don't think the Yankees would be too happy with the way he's talking right now, which is what I love.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. It means he's not a sellout. So, you know, when you listen to Michael K and he's really calling them out, and he's like, how is Stanton not in the lineup in a game against the Phillies in July, at the end of July? I mean, you're talking about the day of the trade deadline, and he's not in the lineup, and it's like, oh, we're taking it slow. It's like, no. If you're taking it slow, then he should be doing rehab games. Like, he's not ready then. That's what you're telling me.
Yeah, what do they mean by take it slow? How many players can skip rehab? How many players can skip rehab, go straight to the big leagues, and they go out and the first pitcher that they face is Zach Wheeler, and then you sit them the following day and you expect them to get remotely ready to perform? It just isn't going to happen. The only way Giancarlo Stanton's going to perform is if he plays with any regularity. Now, if you think Giancarlo's going to get hurt because the Yankees are playing him 2 days in a row, well, let me say this. You just play Giancarlo to get as much output as you possibly can. You squeeze the lemon. And then if he gets hurt, which sucks, you wait for Jason Dominguez and you call him up immediately. Because thankfully, Alex Verdugo's swinging a hotter bat of late. You allow him to just continue swinging, because people keep asking me this question. Well, if Jason Dominguez is getting called up, what do they do with Giancarlo Stanton? What do they do with Alex Verdugo? You know what you do? You figure it out. You just say, hey, are these two players better baseball players? Are these two players better baseball players than Jason Dominguez? Neither of which are better. They're not better hitters. They're not better overall players. They're not better defenders. So what are we really talking about? You call up the better player and you deal with the consequences. If Alex Verdugo can't play because Dominguez is on the roster, if Giancarlo Stanton can't play because Jason Dominguez is on the big league roster, who the hell cares? Does anybody who's listening to this podcast actually think that that's the play, to leave our best player below Judge and Soto in our entire organization? We're going to leave him in the minor leagues for those two players. What are we saying?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, just to defend them a little bit with Dominguez. He is hitting 182 since he came back this month.
Yes.
So I think they're waiting for him to ramp it up. They're eager to get him back. Jack Curry,
which is good.
That. I'm not going to sit here and yell about Dominguez this time around. When his OPS was 1,400 and he was still in AAA, like, oh, he needs some time. I'm sitting there like, I'm sorry. I am shoving guys. Like, it's like, you know, when you have those people that, you know, at a general admission show, like a concert, you're just shoving people out of the way trying to get front row. Yeah, I'm that guy. Okay. In this case, I'm shoving Verdugo out. I don't care if he's hitting 261, which he was at the time. By all means, you're gone, because Jason Dominguez is hitting 1,400 OPS. He's already proven himself when he got to the big leagues. That power translated. That speed is there.
And to be fair, he did play 31 games, I believe. Or was it 31 at bats?
It's 31 at bats.
It's not a lot of at bats, but I will say Jason Dominguez is a player that the Yankees have told us he's untouchable. Very similar to what they said out of Anthony Volpe, but I do think the Yankees would admit Jason Dominguez is a better prospect than Anthony Volpe. So having said this, so having said this, we're talking about a potential future star in this league. If he's physically ready and he's taking really good at bats in AAA, Alex Verdugo has no claim to be in the starting role. Nonsense. Giancarlo Stanton has no claim, because to be honest with you, Jake, if you're going to tell me, well, I can't take Giancarlo's bat out, he played so well in the first half. Our own general manager told us that he doesn't expect him to be physically ready to go for the totality of the season. You call up the best player. That's what you do. And Jason Dominguez, by the way, on the topic of calling him up when he's ready, and I totally agree with you. You slow play it until he's physically ready to go. He's swinging a hot bat. Once he shows that, he's up immediately. I'm putting him at the top of the lineup. I understand people saying what Verdugo's doing, and he's been swinging a better bat.
I don't
awesome.
care.
I don't give a rip. You move him out the way immediately, expeditiously. The Yankees didn't trade for Jonathan India. The Yankees didn't trade for Diaz out of Tampa. They did neither. Okay?
No.
The Yankees didn't add that bat.
We'll go more into that later.
Jazz Chisholm is a run producer. He's not a leadoff hitter. Remember, I told you I would hit him fourth, and you made the point. I really like the emergence of Austin Wells. Totally agree with you. Austin Wells, in general, is taking some of the best at-bats on this roster. He deserves to hit fourth. Fine. Jazz Chisholm is hitting right behind him. I'm not moving what's working right now.
I'm not touching those guys right now.
No, but what hasn't worked long-term is Alex Verdugo. So when Jason Dominguez gets the opportunity with his potential, you're talking about a totally different dynamic in the top three of this lineup. You're talking about someone who's not just trying to, remember we said the job is to get on base. Do you remember that?
He's the job doesn't have a 300 OPS or on base percentage.
No, the job for Alex Verdugo and Anthony Volpe when he had the role, or anybody else, Ben Rice, hey, just get on first base. If you get on first base, it's a W, because Juan Soto and Aaron Judge are up next. Jason Dominguez's job isn't to get on base. Jason Dominguez's job is to be a potential star. He's not trying to take walks. He's trying to drive in runs. He's trying to hit balls 112 miles an hour. He's going to be a star, in my opinion. So when you say that, we're now talking about three dangerous hitters in a row, and I'm putting as many dangerous players at the top of the lineup as I can.
No, I agree with that. I mean, basically, the leadoff hitter also is the hitter that's going to get the most at-bats, right?
Yes.
So Dodgers do that with Ohtani. Phillies do that with Schwarber. I mean, you saw Schwarber today. He literally got hit. Like, he didn't get hit hard. It grazed his jersey. He refused. Unlike other batters that absolutely were like, yeah, I got hit, I'm going to take first. He's like, no, I want to hit. Like, that's what we're talking about with Schwarber. His 378 on base percentage. I mean, like, he's never hit for average, so to speak, although 245 with his power and everything that he does, like, that, I'll take that.
But he knows if he hits for contact, it's going to go a long way. He's not trying to slap a ball to left field or to right field so that he can set up Trey Turner. No, he thinks he's dangerous in his own right.
That I'm not against that, right? Getting Verdugo the most at-bats, I am against that. This is just a Band-Aid. That's all it is. Because right now, Chisholm to me in the 5 spot and then Stanton below him is what I would do. I'm not putting Stanton ahead of Chisholm, and I'm not putting Stanton ahead of Wells. Those guys are working very well in tandem. Wells had what was probably overdue. He had a bad game. It's going to happen. You know, he went 0 for 6. Awful. 3 strikeouts. It's going to happen. You're going to have that. I mean, Aaron Judge just got on base, I believe it was 18 times in 5 games. That's the most since Hideki Matsui in 2004 in a 5-game stretch.
Holy cow.
So, like, Aaron Judge, he is not like, he's not the standard. He is different. So, like, people were complaining. It was Twitter, but people were complaining on Twitter like Austin Wells is 0 for 6. And I'm like, dude, Austin Wells helped us win multiple games during this win streak. He's not going to be perfect every time, you know? So, like, look, Grisham went 0 for 4 today. He also made a huge play in the field that saved the game, if we're being honest. And Gleyber had probably the play of the game. It was bizarre. I still don't understand it.
Can you believe that? Hold on, stop you right there. Could you believe that baseball play? And actually, just for context, for those of you who don't follow my Twitter account, because I talk a lot of mess, okay?
Oh, yes.
A lot of junk. And I'm messing around, having fun. Yeah. I tweeted before that ground ball, anything but a ground ball to Gleyber Torres, our second baseman. That's actually what I said, verbatim. Ground ball to DJ LeMahieu, who's in the game to field defense. Ground balls. He's not there to hit. No. Clearly. Okay? Not there to hit. Aaron Boone wouldn't tell you that because he would lie to you. But anyone with a brain that has integrity would tell you DJ LeMahieu's not in the game to hit. He's there for defense. Okay? And he's not at third base like he is usually because Jazz Chisholm's playing a really good third base and we're not moving him. Okay? So you get a ground ball over to first base. DJ LeMahieu just inexplicably boots this ball. Unbelievable, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, we lost. The game's over. The ball goes straight to Gleyber Torres. It looks like MLB The Show. He fields the ball and actually makes a really good play, leading the pitcher to first base for the out, completely saving the game, which is a shock. Okay. And remember,
shout out to Clay Holmes for getting over there. Because if he doesn't get over there, absolutely, the game's over. So.
Yeah. And Clay Holmes, he hasn't done much right, which can we break down what happened with Clay Holmes? Because I have seen, again, it's Twitter. I have seen many people saying, well, I watched that inning of Clay Holmes. And in general, I've been watching Clay Holmes. He doesn't give up a ton of contact, not a ton of hard contact, that is. And people say, well, if you don't give up hard contact, is it really your fault? Is it really your fault if you give up 3 squibbers and then you walk a guy and then you give up a bleeder single? And that's when I answer the question directly. Look at me when I talk to you. Yes.
It is.
Yes. It is your fault. You cannot sit here, Jake, and have Jack Curry, who's an incredible baseball mind, Michael Kay, an incredible baseball mind, and we listen to reports, Brian Cashman saying, we're looking for swing and miss stuff. Why is it that you're looking for swing and miss stuff? Because that's right. Because you just told me there's an emphasis on doing it. It's valuable. Why? Because there's less to deal with. You don't have to worry about soft ground balls. You don't have to worry about bleeder singles. You know what's better than soft contact? No contact. That's what a closer is supposed to do.
Hard contact and Chisholm throws that guy out and we're not worrying about it. The soft contact is the reason Chisholm can't get over and make the play because it's so slow.
We want no contact. Well, Yes Network says one thing the Yankees are missing when Yes says it, it's obvious. Okay. Cause they're not just going to keep, beating the dead horse the way we can. We'll say whatever we want. Okay. All the time. When you go out there and your job is closer than New York Yankees, and I can't rely on you to strike guys out, I'm essentially hoping for ground balls. Well, I'm here to tell you right now, you just shouldn't be the closer. You're not that guy. You're hoping for a ground ball because you're a power. You're not that guy, bro. You're going to look for a ground ball. No, I want a dude I can put the ball in his hand, and he's throwing 100 right by you, and he's K-ing the side, and then we go home. Okay? That's what we were hoping for. Now, with Leiter, right, they acquired this guy, not because of his ERA, because of his Baseball Savant page tells the story that he can miss a bat. That's the reason they got him. Okay? Simple as that. So we can't sit here and say it wasn't Clay Holmes' fault because balls were little squibby ground balls in the infield. No, you surrendered those squibby ground balls. There's no, don't tell me about luck. Tell me about striking guys out. So Clay Holmes, in my opinion, deserves all the blame in the world for blowing the game tonight. And there's no other way to go around that.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. You know, we defended Clay Holmes. This is our show. We try to keep things fair. We don't have picks on guys, no matter what it looks like. We really don't. Like, for instance, we were giving Verdugo crap, but Verdugo's sacrifice fly in the 11th, he did everything LeMahieu should have done. That's all they needed. Like, I mean, the pretty much the name of the game is small ball when you get into extra innings. It's really simple. You get a guy now, ghost runner on second. And because of that, it's very easy to win baseball games that way. If you just play small ball, you can win. And you have decent pitching, and you get a 1-run lead or a 2-run lead, and you're golden.
100%. And it's also about execution as well. Like some of that's base running. And this is something that Yankees fans have criticized in general. I thought overall the Yankees did a better job of executing today, which is in large part why we won this game. Okay, offensive execution. Yeah. But there are little things that you see, small mistakes, right? Jazz Chisholm, we're tagging up on a fly ball to center field. He gets thrown out at second base because he doesn't leave right away. He waits for the ball to actually get to the cutoff man before he goes to second base.
And it's like, no.
No, here's what Jazz Chisholm should just know. Okay. And I expect, based on what he does analytically on the bases, I expect him to make the adjustment. The adjustment is just taking off right away. He's fast enough to just make it to second base on its own. They could cut it off and still not get you. Yeah. So he essentially just ran his way into an out, and it put Giancarlo Stanton at the plate with nobody on base. It just totally changed the complexion of that inning. And frankly, when you're in extra innings, you want multiple runs in extras. Just taking the lead, there's still a man on second base with nobody out for the home team. So taking the lead in extra innings isn't all that. It's not exactly kind of what you're sold. So I just thought it was important. And I also want to talk about some of the guys, by the way, Jake, in our bullpen who pitched today. Canley, Weaver were spectacular today.
Excellent.
Both were excellent today. And we need that out of Weaver, because for those of you who watch every game, Weaver has not been the Weaver you're used to the last 2 or 3 times he's gone out there. I know his changeups kind of bailed him out of some outings, but Jake, that fastball has had no command whatsoever. Today he had it, and hopefully we get that going forward.
No, I agree with that. And, you know, I want to say something, and it might be a little controversial about the bullpen, but I think they're underrated.
Talk to me.
I think they're underrated. I think Clay Holmes.
Oh, you think so?
Clumped into the bullpen makes them look worse than they are. I think if you really look at it, that one bad stretch that they had, it's because the way Boone uses the bullpen. We've always said this. Boone is very open to using guys. He'll use guys for matchups. He'll use a guy each inning. I mean, that was the thing. And by the way, there's a correlation here. Okay, I want to take you back. How many times there's a record, I believe, set this year. How many times did the Yankees get at least 4 innings out of starters?
Oh, it was like 50 games in a row.
And remember, like, magically the bullpen was unhittable.
I do remember this. Yeah, so, everyone was just saying everybody was clicking.
So mind-blowing stuff, but when the starters started to fall off and the bullpen was used more, guess what? The bullpen started to struggle.
Do you remember what we said before the season started?
What was that?
Do you remember that? We said, and this is where I gave Boone credit.
Yeah.
Remember, I said if the Yankees starting rotation can go big innings, not just pitch well, good ERAs, striking out a lot of guys. No, I don't give a rip. Okay. Give me innings.
Yes.
And what did Aaron Boone do? Right? He got emergences from Luis Heel. He got right? Clark Schmidt, emergences. Like these guys were giving him way more than what anyone was anticipating. Garrett Cole was gone, and we were still going big inning. So that, just to your point, Jake, it helped in the biggest way. And I'm actually going to ask you a question about this bullpen.
Yeah.
Do you think if Clay Holmes was just demoted, simple demotion, no longer the closer, if Aaron Boone woke up tomorrow morning and decided he had a spine, which he doesn't, and he came out here and said, we're going to essentially, we're not going to say we're removing Clay Holmes from the closer role. it's going to be a close by committee, situational, because that's how you can lie to the media. You can just say it's situational. We're going to go with the hot hand. That's how you demote your closer. Then, do you believe, Jake, if they did that, this bullpen would then be considered at the very least above average or serviceable?
Absolutely. And I think that right now is the issue. I think having Clay Holmes, it's like a bad shadow. It's that dark shadow over this bullpen. And, whether it's fair or not, it's the reality. Okay. Victor Gonzalez. But I want to make this very clear. Okay. The two guys who are tied for second in saves on this team are not on this roster. Okay. Victor Gonzalez is in AAA and Dennis Santana was DFA'd and he's on the Pirates. Those guys were, and they only had 2 saves. I want to take you back. The last time Clay Holmes was benched, because he was actually benched back in the day, Efros had 6 saves. Efros was the
wow,
closer.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, so at the very least, we should be hopeful, right? Like at this point, anyone who's watching this team, and obviously Aaron Boone, he's in the dugout. He's seeing everything we're seeing. So based on that history, there should be guys who are listening today. There should be a shot that Clay Holmes is taken out of this role. There should be a shot. And I cannot see any way possible. You can look at me with a straight face and think, Game 6 of the World Series, Yankees are up 3-2, and you're going to hand the ball to Clay Holmes and expect something good to happen. In my estimation, that is franchise suicide. You might be able to pick your battles with Clay Holmes and put him in a nice situation where there's not a ton of stress on him, and I think that can work. But I will say, Jake, putting him in a position like the 9th inning of a championship series, like the 9th inning of a World Series,
Gary. I can't.
There's just no possible way. I'll live watching it because I'll probably just depressingly tweet just funny stuff, but I'm really freaking out inside. So you guys might think I'm having a good time. That would really be miserable. It wouldn't be any fun. There's no fun. I would actually argue Clay Holmes might be a top 2 worst reliever in our pen. Top 2.
That's the thing. And it's like they look at, he's got this great stuff. Well, you know what happened with the stuff today? He started off good. And then he started, he was kind of overthrowing that demon sinker that he has. And he calls it that, not me.
Yeah,
and,
that demon sinker that ends up in contact and hits.
No, it wasn't even that. It was the wild
slider.
Pitch.
Oh, well, the wild pitch was just how terrible. You text me. You were angry. You were mad. Yeah, you were mad.
Right, you want to give up a hit. I'm already going to be annoyed. But you're just giving them. You're giving them. Come on. Don't give them runs. Are you kidding me? Like, these are major league hitters. I can understand. I'm going to be annoyed, right? But I can understand contact, especially against the Phillies. Okay, I can get that. Wild pitches are not acceptable. In addition to that, I'm a fan of Austin Wells. I think he's doing a great job. The last thing I want are a bunch of jamokes, as you would call them, on Twitter. Now, like, Austin Wells isn't good defensive.
That ball was nowhere. Yadier Molina wasn't catching that with a net.
Thank you. No one was getting that.
Nobody.
And then there were people complaining he was lackadaisical. He didn't know where the ball was. He didn't know how. All right. 102 mile an hour sinker goes in the dirt, flips up off of your gear. You tell me where the ball would go. I have no idea.
Johnny Bench wasn't even getting a glove on that ball.
No.
I don't care who's catching. Part of the job of catcher, there's a reason there's a distinction between pass ball and wild pitch. Those exist for a reason. That was a wild pitch. It wasn't even close. Okay,
Gary
so
Sanchez, most often pass ball.
Thank you. Yes. I'm so glad we don't have to watch that. But let me say this about Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes is a pitcher that Yes Network likes to bring up. They talk about this pretty much every other day. They keep talking about movement and they talk about body of work. They talk about Clay Holmes staying in a rhythm. What better way to keep Clay Holmes in a rhythm than being in middle relief? Is there another way to get someone more involved and ready to go? Because in my estimation, you can use them exactly when you want to. You have no idea. Girardi actually talked about it today, and I knew I wanted to bring it up. He said, you never really know. Working with the closer is the hardest job in baseball as a manager, because you think, well, he hasn't gotten work in 3 days. I really want to get my closer out there, but a lot of guys don't want to work not in a closing situation. Clay Holmes is one of those guys. So if you're talking about a guy who hasn't pitched in 3 days and he's not good on that much rest, well, you have to go pitch him. Then all of a sudden tomorrow, you need to pitch him again. So there's just so much, like, you have no understanding of when you're going to be used. How about this? Let's take Clay Holmes out of that job, put him in a role where he has expectation. Every other day, he's going to be pitching. That's the job. And that's something, in my opinion, he's earned by being bad for 2 months. Same thing with Alex Verdugo. Is there any difference between Alex Verdugo and Clay Holmes?
21 for 29. That's not acceptable.
Oh, that's like 66%. I'm no mathematician, but that's bad.
You are only as good as your closer. I've said that repeatedly. So what I would propose, okay, first off, I think Mark Leiter Jr. has the best stuff to be a closer, because I love Canely. My concern with Canely, he only has 2 pitches, right? And he doesn't have the velocity he once had on that fastball. So
no, he's like 96 now.
Yeah. So, I mean, he used to be able to throw like 98, 99, so he doesn't have that anymore, right? So he only has 2 pitches. And then you think about it, you're like, well, okay, who else has a save this year? Victor Gonzalez, Dennis Santana aren't on the roster.
They're not closing.
I mean, Victor Gonzalez should probably be on the roster, if we're being honest. Michael Tonkin has 1 save, okay? Caleb Ferguson was sent out today. We didn't actually cover that. He was actually sent to the Houston Astros. And that deal, the Yankees got international pool money, which, dude, I'd hoard that shit. I don't even care. I'd be signing all the international kids, because, dude, the amount of ammo that you have to trade when you do that. But anyway,
well, we don't know how to draft players, so you might as well sign them in the international draft.
There you go. So and then Kelly Austin, the pitcher from High A, he's actually pitching very well for the Astros minor league. He came over in that deal. But the point I'm making here is, like, there's not really a ton of options. Jake Cousins, maybe, but I don't know. I kind of like him as, like, where he is right now. He can come in, he can pitch an inning or 2, he can strike out 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6. I mean, like, he's disgusting, but putting him in high leverage situations that he's been in, but not on that level where, like, the literal game is riding on you. I don't know about that. Mark Leiter Jr., though, every scouting report I ever looked at today about him was, this guy he's got this mental toughness. Like, he's fearless. And it's like the same thing.
Did you see his innings? By the way, I don't know if I always bring this up. Always. Every single time the New York Yankees acquire a pitcher, just a pitcher, I always look at their usage. Is their usage low? Is their usage high? And I talked about that at the beginning of the year with Nestor Cortez. His usage in general, he struggles. If you use him past 130 innings, he really struggles. He either struggles or gets hurt. Okay?
Yeah.
But let's look at Mark Leiter Jr. He pitched in 2022. He pitched 67 and 2/3 innings. He struck out 73. The following year, 2023, he pitched 64 and 1/3 innings. He struck out 77. Very consistent. The next year, you think, oh, wow, okay, so his strikeouts, it's going to be just over 1 an inning. Wrong. He comes into 2024. He's pitched 36 and 1/3 innings, right? So he's shown us he absolutely can go at least another 35 innings based on what he's already done. Not how you project him, what he's already done. And is he striking out 1 guy an inning? No, he's not. He's almost striking out 2. He's got 53 Ks in 36 innings. That right there,
and his stuff,
when you're talking about a guy on second base with nobody out in extra innings, when you talk about who do you want on the mound to be able to punch a guy out, to be able to get the opponent to fail to get that guy over to third base, you're not looking for a guy throwing a power sinker to give up a ground ball. No, you're talking about a guy who's got a sinker, a split finger, curve sweeper, and a cutter. He's trying to strike you out. It's a totally different mentality. And Jake, I think we both agree here. Leiter Jr. is not who I wanted at closer. I didn't have him on my radar at all.
No, I
but
didn't either.
it perhaps is our best option, and we should just go with our best option, regardless of whatever that option is.
No, I agree. And, I give Cashman a lot of flack, and we'll get to that point. But I got to give him some credit here. I think they might have found their closer. They might not realize it yet, right? Similar thing with Jazz Chisholm. I mean, how many times do we talk about third base is a prime position where you need to have power, you need to have slugging, you need to have production. And
who was our third baseman last time we won the World Series? I forgot.
A-Rod.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Wearing number 13.
Yeah.
So Jazz Chisholm, I mean, he's their third baseman. I don't care what anyone says. He's not moving to second. They saw one game there, and he's like, okay, he's only going to get better. He's only going to get better at that position. And what he's already shown us, the athleticism is going to translate. So, But anyway, my point, it's kind of similar to that move they made to go out and get Didi Gregorius. It was kind of sneaky, right? IKF. I liked what they were doing there. I didn't love the full trade, but I like getting IKF. I didn't like how they used him, but I like.
Oh, the utilization with IKF was just. What's so funny? The utilization.
Let's move in shortstop.
Thank you. The utilization of IKF was so bad, people kind of forgot that he was even good at baseball.
I know. It's so sad.
That's a joke.
I mean, I guess it's not sad because the guy is doing well anyway, because he doesn't need people like that anyway. So, but hey, he has a soft spot for Yankee fans. He did say that. We brought that up on the show early on in the year. Point I'm making here, though, is those two additions, they might end up being huge. And they might end up being guys fitting into roles that we didn't expect. I mean, we didn't think when they traded for Jazz Chisholm, the first thing we thought of was, yeah, he's going to play third base. He's never done it before, but that's what they got him for. And the same thing with Mark Leiter Jr. When we went over that whole video, which, by the way, you guys were awesome. The viewership was crazy on that video. When we went over that, we weren't like, yeah, he's a closer. We're thinking high leverage setup man, potentially. Maybe
it's just a good addition. You can be happy about the addition, but we're not going to. We absolutely were asking for more. There's no excuse about that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I just, I wanted to give that a shout. Guy makes his Yankee debut against the Phillies about as high leverage as it gets in the 10th inning. If he screws up, the game's over. They lose. So this guy gets off the plane and they're like, yeah, how about we put you in the most high leverage situation possible, extra innings where you're on the road. So if the Phillies score, we lose. Like,
is that not the best tryout you've ever seen for your closer? Dude, I mean, what else could you? What are we talking about? He pitched because he had to in that situation.
He got off the plane, and I trusted him more than Clay Holmes. And by the way, I trusted him more than Clay Holmes, and I've been watching Clay Holmes forever. And I didn't even watch Mark Leiter in pinstripes or that New York across. I had never seen him pitch for the Yankees, and I already trusted him more. And he went out there, and you know what? He didn't strike out, all three guys or anything. But you know what actually was really, fun to watch, and something that really stood out to me, because he didn't get a strikeout. What I liked was that fork ball that they were talking about. Al Leiter was talking to Jack Curry. Jack Curry brought it up on the show. Like, yeah, it calls it, it's like a splork ball, essentially. It's like a splitter fork ball. That fork ball got them that infield pop-up. Dude, getting an infield pop-up in extra innings when there's already men on base and they can't. You didn't
think Clay Holmes was going to get a pop-up in the infield?
No, I did not.
No, it's usually a rocket or a ground ball, isn't it? It's usually a rocket ship
or a slow ground ball that no one can get to, and it's in the perfect spot every time, and it's like a bunt. So,
it's almost like the Yankees think that the job of the pitcher is to give up soft contact. It is not. Okay, in general,
man.
Yeah, it's kind of the same concept as just putting the ball in play as opposed to getting a hit. Those are two different things. And you've mentioned this. I've mentioned this. Just slapping ground balls. Like Alex Verdugo, the last month and a half, has just been hitting fungo ground balls to second base. And everyone's like, well, I mean, he's not striking out. So isn't that what you guys wanted? No, it's not. I wanted guys who weren't striking out, and they're not power hitters, but they can get you a hit. That's the trade-off. Okay. If you're not going to hit for power, I need you to hit somewhat of average and more execution, more speed. Okay. This is the same situation with Clay Holmes. Clay Holmes, if you're going to give up ground ball after ground ball and it's not working, well, then why am I the fool for wanting to say, yeah, Leiter's a good fit because he can miss a bat? I trust him to miss a bat. Is it that difficult? Because Jack Curry, because you said before the show, we wanted to talk about this. Jack Curry mentioned that Luis Gil, he hasn't gone big innings before. And based on the Yankees' struggles in the bullpen, he at least introduced the conversation of putting Luis Gil in the bullpen. I want to give you the floor so that you can talk about this, because I know you were excited to talk about Gil in the bullpen, and not in a great way.
No.
Go ahead, my friend.
Not at all. Okay, so Luis Gil, as it stands right now, you have last year's Cy Young winner, who we have no idea if he's even going to pitch again. I mean, we really don't know. I'm of the belief that he's fine, and he's dealing with it, right? Like, I don't think it's his elbow, whatever. I think he actually, I believe, like the upset stomach thing that Aaron Boone said, I think that stuff is real, okay? But regardless of Garrett Cole, Luis Gil is their best pitcher right now. Right now, Luis Gil is who I would want throwing out the first game of the World Series, game 1, right? That's who I would choose right now. I would not even choose Cole right now because I don't know what Cole is right now. So I would choose Luis Gil. Now, when you say, not you, but in general, I'm going to put this kid in the bullpen, what you're saying is that you want your best pitcher to not start the game, but come out of the bullpen, in which he has to come into a game that's already been started for. We don't even know what the situation is when he comes in. We've also never seen him pitch out of the bullpen this year, so we don't know. He's a starter. He's an ace, or at least a super 2. The reason I say this is because, can you trust Carlos Rodon right now? I mean, hey, he's looked decent the last 2 games.
His last start was very good.
But do you trust him right now? The answer is no. You don't trust
him. I don't know if I ever will.
You don't trust him to start game 1 of the World Series. You don't trust Nestor Cortez, especially if it's on the road. And you don't trust Stroman. So the reality of it is, I don't care if Luis Gil has never seen postseason play. I don't give a rip. Luis Gil is your best pitcher. So I don't care with the lack of experience. I'm not putting my best pitcher in the bullpen. I think it's absolutely ridiculous because, look, putting him in the bullpen, it's not like I have Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Garrett Cole. Just throw in a little Zach Gallen here. I don't have like 8 starters.
Like Poteet and Schmidt aren't ready either.
No. Poteet and Schmidt will be in the bullpen. This is what I don't understand, is that the Yankees actually are in perfect position with their starters. They don't need to put Gil in the bullpen. Poteet, Schmidt, like those guys go in the bullpen, right? That it makes so much sense. And if you need a lefty, you put Nestor in there and you see if it works. If it doesn't, no big deal. You just move on.
Poteet. Let's bring up Poteet for a second.
Yeah.
When we talk about relievers, and everyone's trying to figure out where are we getting innings from our bullpen.
Mm-hmm.
Was Poteet a reliever, or if I'm not mistaken, was he not a starter? He's built up to be a starter.
He's a starter reliever. I mean, he's a hybrid guy. He's exactly what you would want. He's a weapon.
Right.
He really is.
So you mean to tell me that he can't do what Michael King was doing? Maybe not to the level, but you mean to tell me that he can't go out and pitch 3 innings in September and October? He can't come out the bullpen and give you 4? In my estimation, he absolutely can.
So exclusive because the Yankees bullpen, and I think this is why, kind of to defend Cashman here. I mean, I wanted Tanner Scott. I don't think I would have given up my number 2, my number 3, my number 5, and whatever prospect to get him, especially on a rental. But I wanted him. And, Esteves, who we saw tonight, Phillies, I mean, he looked really good. And everyone wants a Jeff Hoffman. He's actually from my area. He's a good pitcher. 0.98 ERA, can come in for 2 innings and do work. But look, the reality of it is they did not go balls to the wall for relief pitchers, because I think what we forget about all the time is that October baseball is different. It's not regular season baseball. It's not starter pitches 7 innings, and then you go to the setup man and you go to the closer. And it's also not having, middle relievers and all that. A lot of starters become bullpen pitchers. Okay. That has been kind of the new thing. And so that's actually why, I mean, I disagreed with it, but Cashman traded away Montgomery because he didn't see him as a starter and they didn't need him in the bullpen, essentially from his perspective. So that to me is something that we kind of forget about. So when we're talking about all these guys and how the Yankees need bullpen help and all that, honestly, they might be fine with what they got. They have Ian Hamilton coming back, who I think is going to be a huge addition. Efros could potentially be in there. But I mean, we went over it, off air. Mark Leiter Jr., Clay Holmes, Ron Marinaccio, Josh Majewski, Anthony Misiewicz, Cody Poteet, Yoendris Gomez, Ian Hamilton, Tim Hill, Tommy Kahnle, Scott Efros, Enyel De Los Santos, who they just acquired, Jake Cousins, Nestor Cortez, Nick Burdi, JT Brubaker, Lou Trevino, Will Warren, Michael Tonkin, Clark Schmidt, Marcus Stroman, Victor Gonzalez, Tim Meza, Chasen Shreve, who's actually pitching pretty well, Alex Mauricio, and Phil Bickford, who I still wouldn't want to see.
Dog, this is Hell's Kitchen. When you talk about having guys that you're like, who do I want to pitch in a high leverage situation? It's going to get sweaty, ladies and gentlemen.
It is.
It is going to get sweaty.
I'm saying they have a lot of options. That's a lot. And I'm not saying that I feel great about all of them, but I'm saying that's a lot to choose from. And
yeah, they have options to choose from. They just don't have there's not a guy. Like, they don't have a guy, if that makes sense. Well, they've got dudes, but is there a guy you're like, okay, Cleveland Indians, right? At the time, you're like, okay, Andrew Miller's coming out, right?
Well, now, I mean, Clase, who's better than Andrew Miller.
That's my point, is that Cleveland essentially manipulated their way through the postseason. And I was at those games, especially in Cleveland, right? I was there for all of them. When the going got tough, Francona said, let me go get my guy. Let me go get my guy. There's a man on first and second, nobody out. This guy can miss a bat. He can get a lefty out. He can get a righty out. He's this dude. He's our best pitcher. He's our best. Corey Kluber was on that team, okay? He wasn't better than Andrew Miller. If they needed an out, Andrew Miller was your guy. We don't have the dude that you normally would have in a World Series run. When you talk about the San Francisco Giants in the early 2010s, they had a guy, right? They had a couple dudes kind of like our bullpen, right? They can piece it together, go with the hot hand, maybe use a Weaver, Kahnle. Yeah. But who was the guy at the end of the game? You're talking about Brian Wilson and you're talking about Sergio Romo, okay? Anytime Miguel Cabrera came into the game, they said, let's go get our guy, Sergio Romo. Let's go get Sergio Romo. Because at that point, you just say, let's get out the way and give it to our best arm out the pen. It's just something that usually happens. It doesn't mean the Yankees have to have it, but between now and the postseason starting, the Yankees really, in my estimation, Jake, because I love that you brought up Leiter Jr. as a potential candidate for closer. Yeah. The Yankees, at the very least, need to give him a flyer. You gotta give him an opportunity to be in high leverage situation. Today was a really good debut in that, but let him do it again. Let him do it again. And as he starts to build up and Aaron Boone has confidence in him, we can kind of shift Clay Holmes out of that role. And suddenly we'll look at this bullpen as a bullpen by committee, which would be more fair rather than harping on our closer.
No, and I agree with that. I think what I'm starting to realize, especially from the trade deadline, there were a lot of pitchers that were traded away and that they got a lot in return. And they're not much better than some of the guys that are in this bullpen. And I think that's the thing that I realized as the day went on. I did more research and I'm watching, people complain like, we didn't get this bullpen guy and this bullpen guy who they didn't know about 5 seconds before he was announced. I was looking at like Baseball Savant. I was looking at the stats and everything. And the reality of it is the Yankees have a lot of the guys that were traded today. Like Jake Cousins is just as good as some of the guys that were traded today for 3 prospects. So I feel like relief pitchers, as much as I would love to go and get an arm, which actually this defends and this backs up your point about going out and getting Tanner Scott, because he could have been your guy, even though he he walks a lot of guys. That is a problem. But Tanner Scott, going out and getting him, you have a guy. Right now, you don't have that. I get that. But I think as far as just overall with the bullpen, with the relievers, I kind of see the reason they're kind of overvalued in a sense. And the reason I say that, a lot of these guys, what is a relief pitcher? It's a failed starting pitcher at the end of the day. Most often than not, it's a failed starting pitcher.
You're not wrong.
It's an older minor leaguer, right? They're normally like 27, 28. Hey, this starting thing isn't working for you. You're never going to see the big leagues. Try being our closer. Let's see if you can do that. So I've had that realization, Gary, that the reality of the situation is that, especially when you have Matt Blake, you can create big time relievers. Ian Hamilton was a guy that the Yankees kind of created, Tommy Kahnle. I mean, he's been around for a while, but like you have these guys in this bullpen right now. Like, I mean, Michael Tonkin, he was a cast off from the Mets, and they turned him into a guy who they trusted to come in the 11th and 12th inning, pitch 2 innings, and do a damn good job and get a win against a potential World Series team.
You can definitely piece it together. That World Series championship team, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And you still want a guy, no question about it.
Absolutely.
And
they are missing that. They are.
They're missing the guy, which maybe you get it in Leiter, hopefully, right? I'm not going to say it's likely. I'm hopeful. But let's talk about the 2020 Los Angeles Dodgers, right? We're talking about a World Series championship team, okay? Yeah. People can give that team credit or not, but what we're going to do is talk about roster construction. Everybody complained about their bullpen, not just at the beginning of the year, the whole year, okay? Kenley Jansen was their closer. He was more reliable. He was their guy, right? But what did they have? Did they have the super bullpen that everyone could rely on all year? Not at all. Pedro Baez was their setup guy. Blake Trinan, who had a decent year, was their setup man. Joe Kelly and Ross Stripling were their middle relievers.
I think Stripling was a deadline deal too.
Right. So the fact of the matter here is Joe Kelly was essentially mediocre the whole year, right? They get to the postseason. I would say just before the postseason started, Joe Kelly turned it on. He turned it on. He was always throwing 100. He always had great stuff, but throwing 100 miles an hour is not the job. It's getting outs, okay? Not weak contact, not punch outs. No. Are you getting outs consistently? And he was doing that. So once the Dodgers got into the postseason, they were piecing together outs, and then timely hitting wins you games. Timely hitting. We've talked about this, Jake. The Yankees need more hitters that can offer timely hits, not hit home runs, timely hits. And then, frankly, kind of to your point, you're talking, the list goes on. We can list you 7 guys that can get you outs in the Yankees bullpen, but none of them are high leverage, right? We've got to work one of them into that mix. That's what we're missing. So that's part of the reason why when we talk about the deadline and Brian Cashman, we're not going to sit here and clamor for the Yankees bullpen and be like, oh, it's all right because 4 years ago, the Dodgers could do it. No, the Yankees have to realize that now that the deadline's done, well, then we don't have any control over that. Now we have to work with what we have. Our best recommendation was to go get that high leverage guy. Now you can kind of showcase how much depth this bullpen actually had. But now that you don't have your it guy at the end of the bullpen, now you're almost just allowing Clay Holmes to blow the game at the end of the game. And you're like, oh, well, we don't have the bullpen to shut this down. That doesn't really tell the whole story of what this team's doing. That you can't tell me what you saw from Weaver today, right? What you saw from Kahnle tonight. And then you're going to say, oh yeah, the bullpen was bad. No, Holmes was bad. That's what happened. If we just had a closer that it guy who could shut it down, the story tonight would have been that the Yankees bullpen did their job and their starting pitcher kept them afloat to do it. That's what the story would be, but now it's changed. So not good on Brian Cashman's part at all. It's very typical, but this can work. There's some moving parts that need to be figured out.
No, I agree with that. I actually just went through Baseball Savant. I found some interesting stuff. I mean, Jake Cousins, shocking. His stuff is really good.
Yep.
And then, obviously Mark Leiter Jr., who we talked about, I think he has the best stuff on the team, if I'm being honest, based on the Savant page. Clay Holmes is great. Luke Weavers is very good. Michael Tonkin has some things, but overall it's kind of average. Nick Birdies is really good. So, I mean, there are definitely some guys here. And I think just the reality of it's like Ian Hamilton, some things he's like 96 percentile in, other things not so great. My thing is, though, just like watching these guys, like the Mets got a reliever and the Cubs got one. And I'm looking at their Savant pages, and I understand Baseball Savant isn't everything. StatCast is not everything, but it is a lot of things, and especially with the ERA. And you're seeing kind of, at least in my opinion, there were a lot of guys traded today that are just kind of copies of what are already on the team. I know the Yankees tried to get starting pitching, which I actually wanted to talk about because they were really interested in, Jack Flaherty, and we had talked about it. But what I was not aware of is that Jack Flaherty had 2 injections in his back. He actually missed multiple starts this year due to a back injury. And it's why, like, the Dodgers only gave up their 8th and 19th prospect, one of which was Trey Sweeney, former Yankee prospect. But what I'll say is this, I'm going to defend Cashman here on this one as well. At first, Gary, I thought this was going to be me just yelling like this. I was just going to be pissed. But I really think about it, the Yankees could not have been worse off than this. This trade deadline was terrible. I mean, you had teams. Think about this. By the way, I don't think the Yankees did terrible. I mean, in general, all these guys that we were told were on the market and they were interested in the Reds, shit or get off the pot. They were not trading Jonathan India. They trade Frankie Montas. That's not Jonathan India. Look at what the Rockies did. Nothing. They didn't trade McMahon. They didn't trade Doyle. They didn't trade their catcher, Diaz. They didn't trade anybody. Then you look at the Angels.
More people are comfortable trading in the offseason.
Yeah, exactly. The Angels didn't trade Rengifo. How many times did that guy's name come across your Twitter feed?
Diaz wasn't traded.
So actually, I think the MLB needs to fix this. I think this is an issue. Getting rid of trade waivers was by far the dumbest thing that they could have done. The issue is this, and I'm going to explain this. And this kind of goes to my defense towards Cashman, which, by the way, I'm kind of over Cashman, so I'm not defending him as to the point. I'm he's doing a great job. He did everything he could. I still don't think he was great. But what I want to say is this is a bigger issue. The trade deadline matters for baseball. It matters for, essentially MLB Network, all of that. I mean, they make money off this stuff, off the buzz and everything. And this was kind of a weak trade deadline. The reason I say this is because you have the expanded playoffs. So now you have these teams that don't know what they want to do. And so they find themselves in the middle and they're sitting on the fence. And you see a team like the Mets who are going after it. You see a team like the Padres who are going after it. You see the Cubs go out and get Paredes. Now, we've talked about that. Obviously, they got him for the long term. But you see the Angels, you see the Rockies. These are teams that should have dealt almost everybody, and they did not make too many moves at all. And so it was really just not a great market. It was overblown. Garrett Crochet really blew it up by saying that he wasn't going to get, he needed an extension in order to pitch. We knew that, you and I never bought that Skubal was available. Never bought it.
So now Baltimore, essentially, I like their pickup with Eflin, but they didn't
that
fill
other
the hole.
Pickup was terrible. I'm going to say it right now.
Come on,
he was terrible. And this actually is why I'm glad Cashman didn't make a move. Really think about this. If you're sitting there at home right now, listening or watching this, okay, think about this for a second. Would you be okay doing what they did, not getting a starting pitcher, just riding it out? Because they have a bunch of guys that are coming back too. Would you be okay with that? Or would you rather give up 2 really good prospects, we'll say both in the top 10, for Trevor Rogers? Did you see Trevor Rogers' Baseball Savant? It's one of the worst I've ever seen.
I don't know that there's a single Yankees fan that had a conversation about Trevor Rogers. There were very specific names that Yankees fans were after, and it was essentially the Scott out of Miami. Okay.
Yeah.
People were open-minded on Flaherty, which, based on the package that they got back from Flaherty, I didn't think that package was very strong in general.
No,
I understand about the injury.
I get not doing it.
I mean, that's fine, but every single player in baseball has something. There's something about them that you can talk yourself out of any pickup. Anybody. There's not one player in Major League Baseball outside of Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, and Aaron Judge where you're this is a risk-free pickup. Because frankly, if it was a risk-free pickup for any team, the player would be a $300 million player and he wouldn't be on the market to begin with. So that's something that like we have to remember. Every single player that's been traded for, regardless of who they are and what position they play, there's some level of risk. And Brian Cashman's job is to assess risk and then make decisions. But I'll say this about Brian Cashman. Brian Cashman, in my estimation, if somebody asked me to describe him, Brian Cashman is a person who wants to win every trade, regardless of what it means for the team's short-term needs. Like, let's be clear of what I'm saying here. If the Yankees have to lose a trade in terms of value, so let's just use your example. You trade 2 players out of your top 5 in your system, okay? No team wants to lose 2 players in your top 5 of your system. But of course, it's dependent on who you're receiving. Now, what if I told you that Brian Cashman could receive a player that could potentially put the Yankees over the top, but you will, by most people's standards, people will consider you to have lost the trade, okay? Lost the trade, but you're going to win this year. Brian Cashman would not make that trade. That right there is something I'm comfortable saying. And that is why anytime people look across baseball and they see a trade, they see Flaherty or they see Scott go to San Diego or wherever they go, people say, well, you mean to tell me? They see Correa go to Minnesota, right? And they say, you mean to tell me that offer wasn't on the table for us? No, it was. Brian Cashman is always assessing risk. And by that time, and I actually tweeted this earlier today, Brian Cashman is the ultimate window shopper. If you go to the mall and you sit there with items in your cart for long enough, don't you know, Jake, you're not going to buy the stuff? Don't you know that? That's the way it works. The longer you think about a purchase, the more likely you are to not make it. That's how this all works for all of us, okay?
No,
Brian Cashman at some point, and we thought it would be this deadline. It wasn't. Now we're going to go into this offseason. The whole conversation is going to be about Soto, rightfully so. But when that's done, hopefully he's a Yankee by the end of it. People are going to say, okay, well, what's next? The Yankees are going to have more opportunities to make trades and make signings where people can say, okay, the Yankees are losing on value here. Brian Cashman won't make that decision. Brian Cashman will continue to make decisions and say, well, we got rid of X, Y, and Z, and we got this, this, and this, and that's more valuable than what we gave up. So he thinks that that's the best way to run this team. It's not. The best way to win for a win-now organization with a $300 million payroll is to do the best thing for now. Now. That's your job. You have the best hitter. Jake, you actually brought it up yesterday. The best hitter probably on the planet, okay, in Aaron Judge.
The 3 best players in baseball.
What are we doing talking about value in prospects? Is that prospect going to be a major impact in the next year or 2? If the answer is no, don't you realize that the Yankees can trade a player who's supposed to be here in 2028 and just replace him with a check this offseason? Don't people understand that? That's the difference between the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Mets versus the Kansas City Royals and some teams like the Baltimore Orioles. The turnover is so fast for us. We can blow it, okay? We can sign a DJ LeMahieu who's 36, 37 years old, who's essentially a fossil out there. And we can just replace him this offseason with a check. We're going to do that, okay? So that's why I tell people we need to pump the brakes about value in prospects. Because we just listed for 15 years worth of prospects, and we were like, yeah, I can name you one superstar position player, and it was Aaron Judge. No, so I just don't get why people freak out about I wouldn't trade 2 top 5 prospects. To be honest with you, Jake, I would have personally. I would have traded 2 top 5 prospects to go get the reliever that I had to get. And the reason I say that is because if the Yankees don't get close, not win a World Series, if they don't get close to a World Series this year, you're talking about a team that's selling Aaron Judge. No, excuse me, Juan Soto, who's a free agent. You're selling him. Come play with the Pinstripes. We're always just going to be in the mix. We're not the team that's the big dog who's always getting the player. No, we're the team who's trying to win value trades. That's what we're doing. And I don't understand talking ourselves out of these trades because we're technically losing value. I don't care about, like, I care about prospects, but when you're talking about the Yankees, like, come on, like, if we're talking Dominguez, that's a prospect. I got it. We're talking about Spencer Jones now. We're talking about Warren. These players, I'm supposed to protect them. I'm not on board with it.
I was surprised, I give Warren credit today, but I was surprised when he was announced as a starter and the trade deadline was still going. It's like, wait, so you're saying he's not getting traded at all? Like he's now
That's
untouchable?
what they said.
So
Yeah.
I was a little surprised by that. I think I get both sides. I think without a doubt, I'll tell you this, Brian Cashman, it might be a priority to win a World Series, but I mean, he proves it time and time again, it's not the priority. It's not. Because if it was the priority, then you're right. He would trade those prospects.
It's the last box to check. He sees it as like, well, we've got 6 boxes to check. If we have a certain amount of revenue, right? Attendance, are fans happy? Did I do enough in the trade deadline? Or did I do enough in the offseason to get fans excited to buy tickets, right? And then are we going to win 90 games? Because frankly, if you win 90 games in Major League Baseball, you, at the end of the year, every single fan who listens to this show, some people are going to watch it and be like, well, we don't have a shot. But most people are going to say, oh, the Yankees are in the playoffs. We're all of us are going to be watching. It's going to be really close in the end, and we are more than likely going to lose. So what ends up happening after that is our conversation shifts from roster construction to Juan Soto. And now the Yankees can re-sign Juan Soto. And what are we doing now? Are we talking about the roster again? We're not, are we? We're talking about how happy we are that Juan Soto's a Yankee for life, and rinse and repeat. You continue to do the same stuff. So that's why I always tell people it's so important to bring a GM that knows how to assess risk and know when to take a risk. If there is ever a time, Jake, to lose on a trade in the long term to help you now, it would be in the year that you have one of, if not one of the best baseball players that has ever played the game in Juan Soto and Aaron Judge playing together. And you may or may not only have them for 1 year together. And you're going to tell me that you didn't want to give up value because of how it may affect you in 2025 and beyond. That's the conversation that they're actually having. And I understand, like we're sitting on here on a podcast, but since this is our podcast, there's no way I can sit up here and tell people it's acceptable to worry about 2026 and not care as much about 2024. I think 2024 should be the year that they care about right now, and it doesn't seem like that. It just doesn't.
No, and I get that. I think, again, to his defense, the bats were not there. I really, what I came away with the Rays were bullshitting the whole time. They were not going to trade Yandy. They're going to wait.
What makes you think that?
They're going to wait until the winter. That's when they'll trade him. They weren't going to trade.
What I was wondering is that if you land, let's just say you land Spencer Jones, okay, who's the 82nd ranked prospect in baseball. Do you think Spencer Jones was enough to go get Diaz?
I think the Rays were never going to move Diaz unless you offered them a king's ransom, which I don't know why you would. I mean, I think he's really good. And obviously won the batting title last year, but at the same time this year, he's been good, and he's got good StatCast stuff, Baseball Savant, and everything. But I mean, when I look at Diaz, like, to me, the guy who had the most interest was Arozarena, okay, and then we saw Rosario get traded before Diaz, and there were only a few teams, the Yankees, the Astros, and I believe there was another team. I think it was the Pirates.
It was Pittsburgh. Was there another player then that you like better than Diaz? Because I really want to hit this home. Was there a player that you like more than Diaz for the Yankees? Just who's your favorite position player that we could have added?
I mean, they got him. I'll say this. I think Jazz Chisholm was the best bat picked up. So I do give Brian Cashman credit. I think the Yankees... India was better, but you didn't think India was a player worth giving up prospects for, like bigger prospects? No, I did. I actually would like to see them get them both. My point is, out of all the players that were traded, because it wasn't just the Yankees, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, the two best hitters at the deadline were Jazz Chisholm, and Isaac Paredes. And one of those teams that traded for one of those guys isn't even in contention. So I guess my point was it was a very pitcher open market. And I feel like everyone wanted to bat, and I wanted to bat as well. Like I liked Yandy, I liked Jonathan India, but I just don't feel like anybody wanted to trade their bats. I mean, really, the big gut punch to me, the one that I really wanted to see, potentially in pinstripes, I wanted Rooker. I never stopped wanting Rooker. We just stopped talking about him.
This conversation feels a lot like Yamamoto. So do you remember when Yamamoto decided that he was going to the Dodgers? Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the conversation immediately shifted. Yes Network, Jeff Passan, everyone started saying Yamamoto never wanted to play for the Yankees. What actually happened was that Yamamoto was just working the Yankees and working the Mets and allowing them to negotiate. And then he was always going to go accept this offer with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
I believe it.
Right. But you think that. I don't. Remember, I never believed that. He got the highest offer with the Los Angeles Dodgers. He went to the highest offer. Now, if the New York, you never know. So if the New York Mets had offered $375 million and he took $300 million and went and played with the Dodgers, then yeah, you can absolutely. Let's use Trey Turner. Trey Turner was offered $400 million with the San Diego Padres. He said no, took less money, and went to play with Philadelphia. So San Diego Padres fans can absolutely say, yeah, he wanted to, maybe he didn't hate playing with us. He wanted to play in Philadelphia. He'd been, right? They were recruiting him to Philadelphia. Clearly makes a lot of sense. But did the Yankees have the highest offer for Yamamoto? Well. Not even close. They were not even in the ballpark of the highest offer. We were talking, here's what the Yankees did. They offered less than $300 million. They were approaching $300 million. And then he accepted an offer at $325 million with a huge signing bonus. So I understand when people say, oh, this player wants to play here or that player wants to play there. That's all fine. But when you offer $50 million less than the highest offer, it's like, did Robinson Cano, when he went to Seattle, did he just not want to play with the Yankees, or did he want an extra $65 million? Do you see what I'm saying?
I totally get that. I think that, like, in conclusion, I mean, I think this deadline sucked. I think the market was fake. I think a lot of these people were just gauging.
Well, do we know that we offered Spencer Jones to, say, Cincinnati? Do we know that we offered Spencer Jones to Tampa? No. Like, I haven't heard that. So I can't even say the market was fake. Based on history, Brian Cashman probably offered like a 12, 14, and a 19 prospect and expected them to just trade. And then if they don't, then you can say, well, we called and we talked and you tried to make a trade.
Well, I think the Yankees were unwilling to. I mean, I know we heard it from our insiders that came on here. Truthfully, I feel like the Yankees were unwilling to move their top prospects. I saw stuff about not willing to move Arias, which I thought he was available. They didn't want to move Lombard Jr. At the end of the day, this is what I think about this whole thing. As much as I want to, and I really had to think about this because I was really pissed they didn't really get anything done after Jazz. I mean, I like, Mark Leiter. He's going to be potentially the closer. And the other guy, he strikes out a lot of guys. He can't stop giving up home runs. Maybe Matt Blake will figure him out. But my thing is, okay, the Yankees are not the only contender here. And as a matter of fact, for a while during that rough road, they were the worst team in baseball. And there are other teams that have been better more consistently over the last month or two. There are other teams that have more needs than the Yankees, or as many. There are other teams that have more prospect ammunition than the Yankees that did not do anywhere near what I was expecting. And that, to me, is because of the market. Because you look at the Orioles, they overpaid for Trevor Rogers, right? And you see the Hayes, Austin Hayes move. We saw that. Phillies got Austin Hayes.
I just think we had to overpay. That when we talk about the market,
no one else is willing to do that.
Oh, I don't care.
Yeah, but that's my point, is that, like, as much as I would have loved that, right? I don't want to say loved it, but I would have loved to have Diaz or, India or whatever. I don't think those guys were ever available. Like, my thing is, I think if you're a GM for a middling team or worse, your job is to be in the news. Your job is to have that stuff out there. And then,
well, didn't they trade Paredes?
They did, and they traded a Rosarena, but I don't think they were going to trade Diaz. No.
Right. So, but why? So essentially, think of it this way: if Tampa tells you we're going to put Diaz out there, Paredes is out there, all these guys, we've got 3 guys, a Rosarena's out there. Well, if you are going to tell me that, well, they just never had any idea that they were just never going to trade Diaz. They just never were. But then the Yankees simultaneously told you we're not going to trade our top 10 prospects. Well, then isn't that just the Yankees not even coming to the negotiation table? If you're not going to give us a top 10 prospect, you think you're going to go get Diaz? You were never going to get Diaz for your number
top 10. I think
they just told us that they wouldn't. The Yankees reported, Jack Curry reported, we're not trading any of our top 10 prospects. That was a report 3 days ago. The Yankees never had anybody in their top 10 even on the table, which is why, by the way, Warren started today's game. Warren went out there before the deadline. He was actually slated to start this game. That's how confident the Yankees were. They weren't trading one of their top 10 guys. And actually, I want to clarify. I'm not even sure if it was Jack Curry. I'll find the report. It was somebody. The Yankees were never trading a top 10 guy, and they never have. So that's part of the reason why, Jake, I say you can't go to the Lamborghini and then say, hey, I'm interested in buying a car, and you offer them $65,000 for a Lamborghini Aventador, and they say, I'm not selling you this car. It's $300,000. They go, well, I guess they didn't want to sell a Lamborghini today. No, you didn't offer what it costs.
I don't think there were Lamborghinis like that. That's what I'm getting at.
No, so you're just saying it's not as good of a player to give up Spencer Jones. That's fine. But don't come to Tampa and think you're going to get Diaz without giving up Spencer Jones. If it's not Spencer Jones, the Yankees can take a hike. Well, I'm a Yankees podcaster. If you want to go get this guy who won a batting title last year, if you don't think he's a good enough player because he's kind of having a down year, then just tell us, yeah, we're not going to give you a top 10 guy. That's the Yankees' fault. Then move on to India. Do you think India is a good enough player to give up Spencer Jones? If the answer is no, you're not getting Jonathan India. That's how this works.
I think it goes back, though, before the season. Remember when the Orioles made the move for Burns?
Yes.
To me, Burns is better than anybody that you're getting at the deadline, period.
100%.
And they refused to include Spencer Jones in that deal, which is actually ultimately why he ended up with Baltimore, because they were in on him.
Right.
I don't think that you can backpedal now and be like, yeah, we're going to take like way less value. I think at that point, there needs to be like, if you got Crochet, okay. And I think honestly, if Crochet, I think the whole thing with Crochet is that whole contract extension, I think really killed it, because I think he had a market. I think the White Sox wanted to trade him. And then the White Sox knew his value dropped considerably after he said that, rightfully so. We thought it was insane. And I think ultimately the White Sox still were trying to get what people were going to give them when they knew that, okay, he could help our team, before they knew about the contract extension thing. So I think Crochet was really the big fish. Unlike Skubal, I think Crochet was the guy that was available. And I think the Yankees could have gotten him, but they wanted Spencer Jones. And the Yankees, at that point, they're like, extension, all of that, they didn't match up. And so I think
I thought you said that it would be a good idea for the Yankees to trade for him, and then give him an extension. He's a young left-handed arm. He's a power arm.
I would.
Right. So what's the issue? If Garrett Crochet says, I won't pitch unless I have an extension, well then, if the Yankees want to get better, you've got to lose value. That's the way this works.
You know what Michael Kay said?
What did he say?
He said that anybody should trade, like any contender should trade him and dare him to sit out. Like he's not going to sit out of the postseason.
No, he's not. So what are we talking about? He is worth your top guys.
But to be fair, he wasn't available, because if he was available, he's a Dodger. Dodgers absolutely would have made that move. 1,000,000% they would have made that move.
You don't think the Dodgers thought, okay, well, he's not going to, you don't think maybe teams were afraid and didn't call that bluff?
I think teams were terrified of that. And so they just were like, you know what? Let's just pivot. And we saw
what's so scary about it? Just give him an extension right now. What's scary about that?
I think with him, he had the arm issue, and I think teams were scared off by that. What I will say is
all these guys have arm issues, Jake.
Well,
every guy's hurt. Garrett Cole's hurt.
No, I hear you, but I
this
think
is crazy.
We saw a lot of teams pivot though. Like we saw the Orioles. I mean, the Orioles went out and got Trevor Rogers. If the Orioles went out and got Crochet, could have been KO'd. Like they could have KO'd the rest of the AL. I'm being honest.
Right.
And that's honestly why I think if you take anything away from the show, I think the Yankees got better, right? They could have gotten a lot better, but I also think the market sucked. So I'm still annoyed, and I'm not giving him a pass, right? I still think they should have done more. I think they probably should have gotten Diaz, whatever. But I do also sit here and I'm like, the market kind of wasn't great. Now, there were teams that stooped low enough where they're like, let's just do it anyway. And I think the Orioles really hurt their team. I think the Orioles traded some really good prospects. Like it's the Orioles, really good prospects. In the event that you're talking about rentals. I mean, I don't think Eflin's bad, but I wouldn't have traded all that for Eflin.
No, Baltimore just got marginally better in the short term and hurt themselves in the long term. They needed to get massively better in the short term, because if they got massively better, you can justify the hurt in the back end. But the Yankees kind of did neither. The Yankees just got slightly better, and they're hoping that some emergences and some returns, which people hate to hear. They say, oh, Stanton returns. Dominguez is like an addition.
Valid though, because I mean, you are getting Jason Dominguez back.
No, I understand, but Jason Dominguez, you can't call Giancarlo Stanton an addition. Giancarlo Stanton won't be healthy. So it just, Jason Dominguez, sure.
And those bullpen guys, I think
that's fine.
And then you have Clark Schmidt and you have Poteet, and Heel's been the best pitcher on the team, and Stroman and Rodon and Cole, and they have more riches than most teams in the league. That's actually the truth. I mean,
they just have to have the most, and they had to, in my estimation. But I understand everyone keeps saying about the market sucking. The Yankees needed to allow themselves to, at least from the outside, look like they got fleeced so that they can get their guy. They essentially didn't want to play hardball with any of these teams. They didn't want to put out their top guys. And frankly, you're not going to get some can't miss closer who's just going to fill your closer role. That's not going to happen unless you get a project who's he's not a sustained guy. He hasn't been a closer for 5 or 6 years in this league. You're not going to find a dude who can fill the closer's role ahead of your closer today by giving up guys outside your top 10. So I just think the Yankees, yes, you can say that the market was weak, and that's fine. The Yankees just had to blow over the top of it, and they didn't do it. It's unfortunate. And I'm frankly as disappointed as I've ever been, despite having expected this, despite having expected it.
No, I get that. I mean, I was disappointed too. Like, I mean, I'll give the deadline a B- because I think Jazz is that important. And I told you, I've said it on the show, I think Jazz is going to be a star. I really believe that. I've said it. I really believe he is going to thrive in New York on another level. I think he finally reaches it, because I mean, this is somebody that was traded by Arizona for Zach Gallen. Okay. That he was always supposed to be this type of guy. Like Zach Gallen is one of the best pitchers in baseball, period. So, Miami, it wasn't great. He had to be essentially the guy. Now he doesn't have to be the guy. The pressure's off. He's got Judge. He's got Soto. He's going to learn how to be even more of a pro. He's already really comfortable. I mean, he's got probably the smoothest swing that I've seen since Robinson Cano. I mean, that shit is just wow. So look, when it comes to the Yankees, I think they really helped themselves with Jazz. I think Mark Leiter Jr. has some control. I think he has a chance to be your closer. And the other guy, I'm not overly excited about. So, I mean, not saying he can't do anything, but to your point, I mean, I absolutely was disappointed they didn't make another move. With that said, though, right, at the end of the day, I think the Yankees are good enough to win a World Series. I do. Because I think when you get Dominguez back and you have Jazz, and they decided to ride with Glaber and have Verdugo on this roster, and They have one of the best catchers in baseball right now in Austin Wells. They have the 2 out of the 3 best hitters in baseball, players in baseball, if you will. They have starting pitching. They have potential in the bullpen, like we just talked about. Really, the thing that scares me the most is the manager. That's what scares me the most, is Aaron Boone in a World Series game deciding DJ LeMahieu needs to pinch hit or something. Like, that scares the shit out of me. But if I'm being honest with you, Gary, like, I think the Jazz move really made me feel good about this team, because I really felt like they need another bat. And when they get Jason Dominguez in there, they do. I would have liked another bat, right? But when they get Jason Dominguez in there, now they have 9. And they have Oswaldo Cabrera, who we've seen he's played pretty well when he, called upon. So you have him, you have, Verdugo will probably be coming off the bench, and all of a sudden your bench looks better. So look, totally understand this was your chance to go out. In hindsight, probably, we'll look back on it. Probably they should have overpaid and gotten one of those guys. But at the same time, like, I think they're in a pretty good shape. I mean, I think the league this year, no one wants to pull away. We talk about the Phillies, and the Phillies have one more win than the Yankees right now. And like, that's the reality of it, is that the Yankees were able to be the worst team in baseball for almost 2 months. And they are a half game back from the Orioles for first place. And in addition to that, they're right up there in just about every category.
Yeah, I'm happy about our circumstances despite how we've played. This was an opportunity, as you mentioned.
But this was an
opportunity to just lose a trade. Everyone talks about San Diego, Padres, the Padres. What are they thinking? Why would you trade your top guys? They did this 4 years ago. 4 years ago, the San Diego Padres made huge trades. They brought in star talent. The San Diego Padres went and trade for Juan Soto. Everyone told us, oh my gosh, they gave up just so much to get him. And then what do? They just make another huge trade. They go get Arias. They make another huge trade. The San Diego Padres, it just kind of goes to show you, Jake, that a lot of these top guys, and I've tweeted this multiple times, most of these prospects will be nobodies. Absolutely nobodies.
Oh, I agree.
The chances of it happening are relatively zero. To look at a team's top 5 prospects, literally their top 5, their favorites. When you talk about Spencer Jones and Jason Dominguez, chances are only one of those guys is going to become a great player. That's just how this stuff works, unfortunately. And this is coming from me, who loved Spencer Jones. But you cannot tell me that a 23-year-old player who's playing awful this year, awful in the minor leagues, you cannot tell me that that player is an untouchable in a season that you cannot fail to win the World Series this year. You just told me this is a win now season. That's what they told me. And then now suddenly you want Diaz and you want India and all these guys, but then they were playing hardball because you wouldn't give up a 23-year-old hitting 240. This is my opinion on it, is that you can always just talk your way out of these trades. Well, we don't want to give up prospects. Okay, well then in 2 years, I better see Spencer Jones hitting 1 through 5 in your lineup. If he's not, you blew it.
No, and again, I get that. And look, like, I've become way more open to trading the prospects. I would have traded Lombard Jr. I would have traded Arias. I would have traded any of those guys, because we've talked about it. They don't fit the timeline. They're the Yankees. I mean,
how many top 10 prospects did you predict would be traded last week?
I think 4.
4. How many did I say would be traded?
Not one. Hey, well, another thing I wanted to say, because I thought this was funny and I wanted to put it out there for everybody, just because I think it's funny. The Yankees, okay, when you talk about Arias and you talk about Lombard Jr. and those guys, their ETA, do you realize the 2 incoming Avengers movies will have already come?
I was literally just going to say Avengers. I was literally just going to say we're going to see Doctor Doom before we see these top prospects.
We see the 3rd Avengers movie that hasn't even been announced yet by the time that happens. But no, I mean, I'm with you on that, because look, like, I think the thing with Spencer Jones is that I've already it was hard for me to accept it, to trade him away, but I would have for, Mason Miller. I would have for Crochet. I'm not trading him away for Yandy Diaz. I'm not. And the reason
You know, the problem is that I don't think Spencer Jones, because as much as we like Spencer Jones isn't even in the ballpark to get you a Mason Miller. And I've said this before. If the Yankees wanted those guys,
be a part of that trade though.
It would be Dominguez, Jones. It would be all those guys. And that wouldn't even be enough. I'm not even kidding you, because you have to remember, it's your prospects against other teams' prospects, not what's the best you have to offer. Sometimes you just can't afford it. Like, you just don't have the capital.
Well, like, look at what Chisholm got, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. The Yankees gave up a really good player in Agustin Ramirez, who's better than 20th overall. But the point I'm making here is that what they gave up for Chisholm should have been kind of the standard for getting a guy like Diaz. He's 32, right? I mean, I don't really see, and he's not having the best year. Last year, he won the batting title. This year, he's not. DJ LeMahieu won the batting title, what, two years ago? He's nothing like that. So I guess, like, you know, it has to make sense. And just hearing, like, especially the Tyone stuff, when it was like, yeah, the Yankees are going to have to give up Jason Dominguez and Spencer Jones. I understand paying above the list price to try to, you know, outdo other people.
No, but that player is just that mediocre as can be. You
also have to be aware, because if you overpay, like, you're also hurting your team now. I mean, if you get rid of Dominguez, I mean, he's part of your now, you know.
Well, first of all, Jason Dominguez was never. That's not what that was going to cost.
I don't believe he was, but
Jameson Tyone, are we talking about the same Jameson Tyone with a 4.34 ERA every time I see him? Yeah. Please. Jameson Tyone was never going to cost Jason. He wasn't even going to cost Spencer Jones.
But you get my point, though, with Jazz Chisholm. It didn't cost an arm and a leg, and I don't think Diaz is much better. I would take Chisholm. I think Chisholm is more valuable than Diaz.
I agree with you.
Chisholm is younger. Chisholm plays multiple positions. Diaz is a defensive liability. Okay, there's a lot of different things that you could say there. Well, I'm not trying to trash Diaz. I wanted Diaz, but I'm not giving up my number 2, my number 3, my number 4 prospects for Diaz. And so,
no, you have to love the player you're getting. You have to love the player you're getting.
That's the thing. So I don't hate if they turned it away, because I probably would have given away Lombard Jr. and you know, Arias, maybe not both of them, but I would have given one of them away, because again, the timeline doesn't fit. I wouldn't be, if I had $300 million payroll, I'm not saying that, like, man, I can't give up those guys that we're not going to see until 2028. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. But I'm also not, like, rushing to get, because here's the thing, Gary, we have a different thought process on prospects. The reason why I've been a prospect hugger isn't why you would think. I look at them as currency. Okay. There are guys that I really like. Like, I think Spencer Jones could be on this roster, right? But if you trade away Lombard Jr., Arias, Spencer Jones for Yandy Diaz, that's now currency. You've now overpaid. So now when a really good opportunity presents itself, you don't have as good of a package to outdo the Red Sox, to outdo the O's, to outdo the Phillies, to outdo the Dodgers.
Oh, yeah. That makes a lot of sense if Brian Cashman wasn't your GM. Brian Cashman has not pulled the trigger. Though. No, your point is perfect. It's you cannot argue against that point. But the problem is that Brian Cashman, okay, in the last 20 years has not traded his top prospects. We're talking about number 1, number 3, and number 6, all thrown into one package to go get one player, right? The Yankees have never done it, not even one time, not a singular time, not once.
Well,
not one time.
They did it for Sonny Gray.
Which prospects did we trade?
What's his face? The guy on the O's was the number 1 or number 2 prospect.
You're not talking about Jorge Mateo, are you?
Yeah, Mateo was the number 1 prospect.
Think about that.
No, I know. But they did. They did actually. And Sonny Gray wasn't a good trade. I hated that trade from the moment they made it. But
you're getting Sonny Gray. That's like my point. That's like bringing back the point. The Yankees cannot be trusted to go make that home run trade. They never will do it. Sonny Gray was never a home run trade. You traded for Sonny Gray. Regardless of what you gave up, you were getting Sonny Gray.
I mean, there's your example right there. This is the same team that traded away Jesus Montero.
Juan Soto.
Top prospects in baseball. They traded him away for a guy with arm issues and Michael Pineda. He
Thank
already
you.
had
Juan
shoulder
Soto.
issues.
Juan Soto was available on the market with multiple years of control, and the Yankees said, we wouldn't trade you Jason Dominguez. This is years ago, not now when he's ready to be in the big leagues. Years ago.
Because I knew deep down, I knew he would end up a Yankee. I said that. I said, I would not trade for him now because they're going to go and get him when he
I don't think that's a win. By the way, I don't think that's a win. You do. I don't. Because you wasted a year and a half of your time not winning a baseball, not winning, right? And you just get to bring in talent later on. Oh, well, we would have had to give up Dominguez for Soto, and then 2.5 years later, now we get to pair them. Yes, that's true and awesome, but you didn't get an opportunity to go win a World Series in that 2-year window. You had no chance. That's my thing, is that yes, technically you preserve value, and that's what Cashman does well. He always protects value. He always assesses risk.
We're going to be cracking up because they're like, oh, of course, this episode after the trade deadline is the longest episode in the history of Yankees Unloaded.
Let's wrap in the next 30 seconds. You just can't tell me that it's a win to keep Jason Dominguez, but you have no chance to go win a World Series the next 2 years. But then 2 years from now, you're going to pair the two, and then he's in a contract year, he may walk. How's it a win? It's just not. Because now we're talking about in the next 2 years, if the Yankees don't win a World Series, Aaron Judge is going to start entering out of his prime. So really, you just shorten your window. Just get better.
I get that. But I also, I like being able to have Dominguez. And obviously this was predicated on Peraza turning into something, which I don't think many people foresaw him hitting 290 and looking good in the postseason and never getting an opportunity again. And then, Volpe, he needs to be a star. I think if he does hit that point where he does become that and Jason Dominguez becomes that, then it was absolutely 1000% worth it. So, that's I would say there. But man, this has been a beefy episode. You guys asked for the content. I think we delivered. Last thing I'll say to wrap this up, again, totally fine not getting Flaherty, because when I found out about the back issues after this, all I could think of was Montas. They ignored. Remember this. Okay,
he had a shoulder thing. Yeah,
he had a shoulder, so he did not pass. Brian Cashman passed for him. He did not pass the physical. Brian Cashman pushed it forward. And guess what? Montas had an injury, and there you go. So I like to stay away from guys that are literally dealing with injuries right when you trade them, personally. And, deadline could have been a lot better. I'll say this right now, though. Going out and getting Jazz Chisholm might have changed the season. There's a different energy in the air. And I think, like I said, I think he's going to be a star. And if he ends up being as good as I think he'll be, and again, I'm thinking 30 plus home run potential, right?
I hope so.
If he ends up like that, you have Judge, you have Soto, you have Dominguez, all of which should all hit at least 30 home runs.
Well, he's either going to be that or he's going to be Steven Drew. So you can take your pick. We'll see.
I don't think it'll be Steven Drew. I think,
you'd hope not.
I think at worst he'll be Didi Gregorius. He'll be a piece, but I think he has a chance to be like big time, like
we hope
star. So we'll see what ends up happening. I tend to believe that's where they're going. Tomorrow, Gary, I can't believe I'm saying this. They're playing at 12:35 Eastern time.
I'll see you guys in the morning.
And Nestor Cortez is on the mound on the road. I already knew you were going there. We just know each other so well at this point, but yeah, it's not ideal. Hopefully
you never know. It's baseball.
Well, yeah. They scored 14 runs against the Phillies in the first game, and I didn't expect that. So we'll see. We will see. That's going to do it. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Also be sure to follow us on all social media at JK Bogan, at Gary Sheffield Jr., at Yankees Unloaded. And please let us know what you think. If you've gotten to this point, okay, What, Gary, what should they type in the comment section to let us know that they actually watched it all the way through to an hour and 45 minutes? I mean, this is a movie, so not as long as the movie you told me to watch, The Judge, but it's a movie. This is a movie length. So what?
Yeah, it's a long episode. We'll call it Oppenheimer. You can leave Oppenheimer in the comment section. We'll know you were here.
Oh man, that's great. All right. Well, all right. Drop Oppenheimer if you're watching this still, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
And like this video.